Graph linear equations. A linear equation, in order to be graphed, has to be in the appropriate form. The best form we have for graphing a linear equation is the form y equals mx plus b. In this form, it is very easy to find m, which is key because it is slope, and b, which is very important because that's our starting point, or the y-intercept. We will use these on the next slide when we're graphing. Let's take a look at some examples of linear equations. The first example is y equals negative 5x plus 3. Notice in this equation, I can very easily see that the number in front of x, which is m, is negative 5, and the constant added on at the end is 3. In the next example, y equals negative 2/3 x minus 6. It is easy to see that the number, in this case a fraction, being multiplied by x is 2/3, and the constant at the end is negative 6. Finally, in the last example that I have here, y plus 8 equals x minus 2. I can notice that the y is not isolated on the left side of the equation. So first I need to do some algebra and move that 8 to the right. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. And I'm going to end up with, because they add up to 0, a y on the left and the x minus 10 on the right. As I can see in this equation now, the m is 1 because there is actually a 1 in front of the x. In mathematics, remember, we do not write that. And because this is minus 10, my b is now negative 10. So again, it is important for us to be able to recognize linear equations. First of all, it is important to know that in an equation, x and y can only have an exponent of 1. They cannot be squared or cubed. That is important to recognize. And secondly, we cannot divide by x or y. That is not allowed. Once we recognize we have a linear equation with these facts, we can now put them on a graph. So let's take a look at how we can get a linear equation onto a graph. Again, we're going to be working in that same form. Y equals mx plus b. And here's going to be my example of y equals 1/3 x plus 3. Again, the m and the b are important parts of the equation. I'm going to start with the b to graph because that's going to be my starting point. So in this case, b equals 3 is going to be where I start on the graph. That starting point is called the y-intercept, and it is going to be the point where the line crosses the y-axis. Remember that the y-axis is the axis that goes up and down on a graph. So I'm going to go to 3, and I'm going to make a dot. Next, I have to work with the slope. Remember, the slope is the m. So in our example, I can see that the m is actually a fraction. 1/3, 1/3. This is okay because we actually want slope to be a ratio, and it's going to be a ratio of the rise divided by the run. And that's going to be the visual representation of the slant of the line on the graph. If it's positive, the line will go up from left to right, and if it's negative, the line will go down from left to right. Notice in this case, we have a positive slope So I already know that my line will be going up from left to right somehow. Remember again that slope is rise over run. So I'm going to go over to my starting point, and it says in the slope to rise 1 and go over 3. Then I rise 1 again and go over 3 again. Notice the bigger blue dots are resulting from the slope, and now I can connect those dots with a diagonal line and if I add endpoints, or actually arrows on the end, I will now have graphed a linear equation. Let's take a look at a couple more examples to finish up. First of all, y equals 2x minus 4. Again, always start with the y-intercept. What is the constant that's added on at the end of the equation? In this case, because it's minus, we have a negative 4, and I'm always going to start with the y-intercept. Remember, on a graph, the y-axis is up and down, so I'm going to go to negative 4, make my starting point, come back to the equation and find m. In this case, m is 2. Now we want slope to be rise over run, a fraction, so I can write 2 over 1. So that my rise is 2 and my run is 1. So I'm going to go up 2 over 1. Notice my scale is 2 going up and down and 1 going horizontal. Up 2 over 1. I can do this at least 3 times. And now I have at least 3 points to get the linear equation that I need. Going through all those points, we are set to go. Make sure you add on the arrows at the end, please. And finally, on the bottom, my last equation, y equals negative 1/2 plus 1. Again, start with b. What's added on at the end? A 1. So that's where I'm going to start. On the y-axis, go to 1. Now I determine my slope, which in this case is a fraction and it's negative. Remember, that's rise over run. This line will be going down. So instead of going up 1, I'm going to go down 1 and over 2. Down 1 and over 2. And now I have a way to create my line through those 3 points which will allow me to create my line. If I add on the 2 points at the arrows at the end, I have finished up my second line. Hopefully that helps you. With Learning Target 1A, I can graph a linear equation.